Hi, my name is Mark and I am privileged to be doing today's God Thought. In fact, I've absolutely loved listening to all of the God Thoughts that we've had throughout this month. They've been uplifting, they've been encouraging, they've been challenging, and it's just been brilliant to see the way God's been speaking to our church through this season. And today I was just reminded actually this week, just yesterday, I was reading a book called Unleashed by Gavin and Anne Calver. Gavin spoke a few weeks ago on a live stream, and in this book Anne describes this vision that she had of someone sitting in a chair and just eating lots of food and gradually getting bigger and bigger and bigger to the point where they could no longer get out of the chair. And by that point, this person hadn't even realized and just kept on eating and eating and eating. And she felt this was a challenge to the church, and the words that accompanied it that she heard from God were, stop feeding yourself, start feeding others. And you know, at the beginning of lockdown, we started and we were physically feeding others, and we've been distributing food parcels, and that work continues now, and maybe it will have to ramp up in the weeks to come. But also in the last month, we've been spiritually feeding others and feeding one another and a wider sphere of people as we've shared the things God's laid on our heart. And I think it's a reflection of what Jesus was saying to Peter in John 21, when he says to Simon Peter, do you love me more than these? And when Peter replies, yes, Lord, you know I love you, he says, feed my sheep. And a sign of our love for Jesus and the fact that we're living this out is that we feed others, and we feed others, of course, physically, but also spiritually on the Word of God. And that's really important. And so tomorrow is All Saints Day. And you know, often when we think of All Saints Day, we think of those who have been named over the years as saints and have maybe been given that position of honour by the church, normally the more traditional streams of church. But actually, when we read the New Testament, we see in books like Corinth and Ephesians that actually saints is the way of referring to every single follower of Jesus Christ. In other words, we're all saints. So when Paul writes to the church in Corinth, despite all of the problems they faced, he says, to those called to be saints, God's holy people. And then in Ephesians, he says, to the saints of God in Ephesus. And he uses this term, and throughout the New Testament we see that actually there's such a high view of discipleship, of what it means to be a follower of Jesus, of what it means to believe in Jesus, that it's about laying down our lives for the sake of the gospel. Jesus says, you are the light of the world. He speaks about the church in the same terms as that he speaks about himself. And the New Testament says, you are all saints. And then it's no wonder in Ephesians, it then says, you know, therefore live a life worthy of the calling you have received. And that's what we're trying to step into as a church more and more. We want to be faithful to the New Testament. We don't want to dilute discipleship. We don't want to water it down. We want to live out the life to the full that Jesus has called us to live, even in this difficult season. And so I just wanted to end with these verses from Hebrews chapter 12, because how do we live this calling out when the going gets tough? And you know, one thing we should always be aware of is all of those people who've gone before us. And that's kind of what All Saints Day is about. It's remembering those who have been faithful and loyal and have lived out this Jesus-shaped life to the full. And we look at others, and we look at the church around the world. And so in Hebrews 12, it says, therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, all of these holy people, these saints, past and future, you know, there's this communion that we have with them. You know, the church around the world, the church throughout history, we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses. So let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles, and let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinners, so that you will not grow weary and lose heart. And so the writer of the Hebrews, having described all of these heroes of the faith in chapter 11, he then says to the church right now, just think about those. We're surrounded by this great cloud of witnesses. So keep going, keep running the race that's marked out before us. Consider those who, they didn't drop out. They kept going, they persevered, even when it got really tough. And some of the things they experienced are things that, maybe we will never experience. And so above all, this writer of the Hebrews says, consider him, consider Jesus. He, for the joy set out before him, who endured the cross. And there's joy set out before you too. So don't grow weary and lose heart. Keep in the race. And as you do so, encourage others and bring others with you, and live up to this calling that you've received to be saints, to be God's holy people, not watering it down, but living it out to the full.